Can you hear me?
Wait. Oh, yes. There is a small chance it will just be us.
Hmm. Well, I can run you through the presentation as if you haven't heard it enough times.
Well, I'm hoping that the link we sent on the newspaper article is legit,
Mm,
like
mhm,
that
mhm,
a number wasn't off or something.
mhm,
People are like
mhm.
trying to get in and be like, I can't get in.
Right.
So where are the boys?
Here, they're gonna get some special things ordered from Amazon after this meeting if they don't disrupt me.
Wow, you're a
Bribery.
nice mom,
Hey, whatever works.
right? Whatever technique is effective. Oh. Um, oh gosh, what was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you something about the engagement portion that's left, which I mean is really just. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you about. And here's where probably I'll need to talk to the other Kelly about it more, but I'm trying to think about um, if we need letters of support from like an HOA, they have to vote on it. So we need to ask now.
Okay.
So I'm wondering
You
if
have
we need.
ones in mind, or even not just necessarily HOAs, but like just good neighborhood groups.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering
Mhm.
if because like we have some in our stakeholder community, or our
Uh-huh.
community stakeholder community, like
Right,
Rusty, we've got
right,
Gary Hogan,
right.
we've got a few, and I'm wondering if we should send them a template
Hmm.
and say, hey, can you sign this letter of support?
Could easily create that if y'all want to distribute it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Ugh.
You're good.
Especially with the people we've worked with, I'm just wondering, we made all these changes
Yeah, yeah.
for you, that now you can come out and support it.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that's fair request. Okay, I will draft something up and send to you. And also, I'll try to think about people who could be included.
Good afternoon, Joe.
Armand, it looks like we have one attendee who has found the correct link.
That is correct. I'm wondering if we should give people a few more minutes just for people to get the WebEx
Yeah.
portion, because you have to download it and all that.
Right.
jazz.
Right.
It was very difficult to get here.
Wasn't sorry.
Yeah. No, I went through the app and the app didn't work, and it wanted me to be a WebEx person and all that jazz. So yeah, give it a look.
Apologies.
Yeah, this was the only way we could find an app that would allow us to be able to have a virtual meeting citywide with as many people as we wanted. That was one of the constraints. Teams in them definitely have caps.
Right. Right.
Michael, it's good to see you again.
Yes, good to be with you. I'm logged in, ready to go. Apologies for navigating the WebEx there for a moment, but happy to be here.
You weren't alone. Others had issues too. We're going to give everyone, hypothetical everyone, another few minutes just to make sure that no one's trying to log in and having to download and update an app.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Mr. Casper, where in Fort Worth do you live? Or I'm assuming you live in Fort Worth. Maybe I should ask, where do you live?
Sorry, I walked away. Were you talking to me?
Yes. Sorry. I was
No,
just curious if you live in Fort Worth, and if so, where?
Yes. Far North Fort Worth, Denton County.
Okay.
In the above Sendero Ranch in the Madero neighborhood.
Okay. Okay, great. Welcome.
Yep. So it appears that it's true that it's just people trying to navigate how to log into WebEx.
Right. Right. Thank y'all for joining. We understand that a few people are having issues with the WebEx login, so we're starting a little bit late just to allow folks to navigate that. Go ahead and share the screen, Armand.
Well, we wait. So us posting things on that PDF and showing things we think would help, does that do anything, or is that just kind of getting kicked
Absolutely. No,
Okay.
absolutely. The PDF, are you talking about the plan document itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can post the things. We're way up in the neck of the
Please.
corner up here. There's a lot, and we spend so many times in traffic here. I think a lot of us, and I see a lot of things on the Facebook page. We need a lot of people here. Need a lot of show our support for these meetings and things like that.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
never shows up. So I just wanted to know that I posted things on that. It would actually be something that would be seen.
Absolutely. Every comment that we are receiving on either the draft plan or the roadway network, which is that interactive map, and I'll try to make sure that I share the screen and show folks how to comment before we wrap up. But everything will have, your comment will be documented. We'll have a response to your comment. We will either identify how we addressed it, or reach out to you if we have questions, or document why we weren't able to address it fully. If it's not a simple like yes, noted, corrected type of adjustment.
All right, certainly. So is this for the entire Fort Worth area or just our difficult
It
neck of the?
is.
Okay.
It is. It is. So it's a master transportation plan. It's a citywide scope. But of course, the issues in the north are some of the key issues that the plan is trying to address. And folks who live there are definitely. We hear from y'all. I wouldn't say the most, but you're a very engaged constituency. For everybody knows why, right? Y'all have some real needs when it comes to the transportation system. So I would definitely say that it's a citywide plan with special attention to North Fort Worth.
All right. And are you guys engaged with the state with 287 and such? If we bring things up that, I hear 287 is going to get rebuilt here within the next 10 years, but can we pass those things along through you, or do we need to go through the state to pass on issues we have with 287?
So hi, my name's Armand Bryant. I'm the multimodal transportation manager for the city of Fort Worth, and I have coordination meetings with TxDOT from time to time. If you have questions about 287, I'll be more than happy to share my email address, and you can just send them to me, and I will forward them to TxDOT for them to provide a response.
All right. Can we add them to that PDF and they may make it there? Or we just go right through you?
Sure. I mean, I think so. Armand,
Okay.
we're capturing those comments and putting them in the matrix, and so we can highlight the ones that, as I said, Mr. Casper, we need to provide a response, whether that's something that we can address or not. So if it's a TxDOT issue, we can flag that and make sure that Armand and his team who coordinate with them regularly have that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's small things until the whole major rebuild happens. Just, like a turn here, turn lane there, something just make traffic flow a little bit until we get the full 287
Mhm.
frontage roads, both sides, all that jazz. So, all right, certain. Appreciate it.
Nice. So you have ideas for like interim solutions while we wait for the more long term.
Yeah, definitely. I spend every afternoon in it, so I've got a lot of ideas.
So Joe, I just put my email address in the chat, so you can copy and paste. And then, like I said, if you have something that you'd like me to bring to TxDOT, I'd be more than happy to share it with our Tarrant County office, or even our Denton County office if you're going above North Star Parkway.
Appreciate it.
Armand, I will defer to you on when you would like us to get started.
I agree. It looks like it's been 13 minutes.
Mhm.
So maybe this is a good time for us to start, and people can, as they come in, they can just join in.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming. Like I said, my name's Armand. I'm the multimodal transportation manager for the city of Fort Worth. And over the past now it's been 20 months, we have been collecting feedback from the various council districts, from the public, from stakeholders, from developers, from different regional partners like Tarrant County, all the Parker County, Denton County, Wise County. We've gotten feedback from just as many people as we can, as well as the state. to put something together that would be more than just a build out document of, oh, look at what our aspirational map would look like. This is more of a plan that starts to answer questions like what, about capital planning, and provides timelines for when we would build what. It starts to answer those questions. We've been working with Kelly Dugan and Michael Schwartz from AECOM, and they have worked diligently to put together a presentation for you. Real quick, just to give you a basic introduction, and then after that, we would start with some questions and answers. Feel free to ask whatever question you want. If we don't know the answer, then we will definitely try to get your information and get back to you. But we're here and we're ready to go. So with that, I'm going to give you Kelly Dugan.
Awesome. Thank you, Armand. Yes, and so just for the others on the call, this is a citywide effort that looks at the master transportation plan for the city, and really takes a regional approach, which we will talk about here in a couple slides. As Armand said, I'll try to be succinct. This is 2 years of work, and with appendices, like 600 pages worth of a plan. So understand that folks have specific interests and specific areas of interest. So I'll give a real high level executive summary overview of the plan in these next few slides, just to kind of orient you with the document. That way, if you do go to the website movinghamillion.org and click on the plan, you can navigate through and know where the areas that interest you the most are within the plan. And then after I finish the presentation, we'll have Michael Schwartz, who is our GIS lead on the project and the lead on the Master Roadway Network. I'll have him pull up the Master Roadway Network, and we can zoom into any areas of interest that you have and look at what's planned for those areas. So with that, just wanted to quickly share why we're here tonight. As I said, this is the result of 2 years of work that the city has been doing to really look ahead at Fort Worth's future through the lens of its transportation system. We want to share that draft with you, kind of orient you with the draft document, as I mentioned, so that you know where to go as you navigate through it. Next, we want to explain the needs that shaped the plan. We want to review the type of investments that we have identified through the process. And then finally, as Armand said, we're here to answer your questions. This can be a kind of office hours type of event where, we're just here to answer questions and to collect any feedback. And we would love the type of input, Mr. Casper, that you mentioned. So before we talk about solutions, just a quick look at, what's not working today. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone on the call, but, we're seeing more congestion, longer travel times on many of our key roadways and intersections. We are also seeing freight traffic using local streets, because trucks often don't have appropriate alternative routes when the primary route fails. Another big issue we identified is, gaps in the sidewalk and bike network. And finally, access to transit can be challenging, especially when it comes to getting to and from transit stops. And if those first and last mile parts of the trip are not safe or convenient, then it becomes much harder for folks to get around. But, the challenges that we just showed are not unique to one neighborhood or corridor. Of course, they're happening across the city. So that's really the impetus for the Master Transportation Plan, to take a comprehensive look at where improvements are needed and how to prioritize them. But you know, beyond the city, as I mentioned previously, the transportation system really serves the entire region. This map that we're showing here on the screen, that yellow area, is what we're calling the greater Fort Worth geography. So essentially the western half of the Metroplex. And we all know while the city is now supporting 1 million residents, when you factor in the population of that greater Fort Worth region, you're looking at more like 3 million that the city's transportation system is anchoring. So more people and jobs, of course, means more congestion and safety concerns and just general infrastructure and maintenance needs. So that's where the master transportation plan comes in to help the city prioritize investments and, you know, one, identify where improvements are needed, and then two, to help align those projects with realistic sources of funding. This shows, you know, how the plan moves from identifying those transportation needs to delivering projects that can actually be built and funded. This is a long-range planning document, but one of the things that was really important to the city of Fort Worth is that it is grounded in reality, and that it is not just an exercise in envisioning, but it is actually tied to realistic projects that can be funded and built. So in this outer ring, you know, we start with this universe of projects that represents the full set of transportation needs across the city. These are identified through our travel demand modeling and through our gap analysis and some other technical processes. And this really represents that ultimate build out of the transportation system. From that larger universe, we then move into the constrained project program. This is where projects are prioritized using the criteria that we've heard from all of our outreach efforts that, you know, are values for the city, things like congestion relief, safety, connectivity, cost effectiveness. And the result is this prioritized list of projects that looks roughly 25 years ahead. And then moving inward from there, we have our transportation investment program, and that's really looking at a 10-year horizon. These projects are, you know, moving through the city's delivery pipeline and are being prepared for funding and partnership opportunities, future bond cycles. You know, moving from that. Okay, here is our you know, large universal wish list to our constrained program to, okay, what can actually be built in the near term. And then finally, we have our CIP and bond program, and that's that 4-year horizon, you know, when projects are ready to be advanced into design and right-of-way acquisition and ultimately construction. So, you know, these are kind of all the different scales of projects that the plan encompasses. One of the kind of key takeaways of this diagram is as you move from the outside to the center, you know, the number of projects, of course, gets smaller, but the level of readiness and certainty of these projects increases. And this is just to show, you know, that the plan looks at the entire transportation system. It's not just roads. It includes roadway and intersection improvements, particularly where congestion and operational issues occur. But as I mentioned previously, it also considers freight routes, transit, and looking at closing gaps in sidewalk and bikeway and trail networks. And then also the plan identifies technology and innovation corridors where, you know, we can make sure that as we are delivering these projects that they are future ready and incorporating some of the new emerging transportation technologies. So, you know, the next is really how we determine where the needs are. This is a kind of nerdy process-based diagram, but, you know, in short, we used a combination of technical analyses and community engagement to help us get a good understanding of how the system is performing today and what the key issues are. So combining that data and the technical analysis with what we heard from the community, that helped us identify, you know, where certain transportation projects will have the greatest impact, and ultimately develop that prioritized list of projects that you'll see later in the presentation. And then based on the needs analysis that we discussed earlier, the plan recommends improvements across that entire transportation system. So for roadways, the focus is really on targeted gap closures. So, smaller segments of roadway that, when complete, will create a more contiguous corridor. We see great capacity and operational improvements with those strategic gap closures. So, the focus on the roadway projects was really in that gap closure, but also, operational and other types of capacity improvements are part of those roadway projects. For freight, as I mentioned, identifying safer, more direct routes for that type of use, and then also prioritizing some grade separated railroad crossings to make sure that we can keep goods moving. For active transportation, again, that the focus is on closing those gaps and creating a more contiguous network. And for transit, we really just looked at some low-hanging fruit type improvements to improve first and last mile connections, to improve service reliability, frequency, transfers, just a set of recommendations that we've made to Trinity Metro to help improve their existing system. Okay, so once we developed this universe of projects, we needed a clear and consistent way to prioritize them. Projects were scored using this framework that tied really, again, as I mentioned, to the delivery outcomes that are the values that we heard from the public during all of our engagement over the last 2 years. So the criteria include things like congestion relief, safety, cost effectiveness, access, connectivity, economic development, and plan consistency. And this diagram really just shows how we sort of took those values and converted them into something that we could map and or measure so that we could compare it to the projects that are proposed and help us arrive at a sort of scale of how well these projects contribute to these values that we heard from the public. So these results are used to rank the projects and ultimately phase them with available funding. And that prioritized project list really is ultimately what forms the backbone of the draft master transportation plan. And once we heard how once we understood how those projects were ranked, the next question is, okay, so what can realistically be funded and when? And that is where the fiscal forecast comes in. This slide shows the inputs and outputs of the financial model that we utilized to produce the fiscal constraints that we needed to work within. So essentially, we wanted an idea of funding capacity for the next 10 years so that we know, okay, we have our list of projects, we understand how they rank, we have cost estimates for all of these projects. How can we start to move these projects from a sort of long-term list into an actual funding cycle and start getting them ready for bonds and also for grants and for other partnership and funding opportunities. Okay, so yeah, Stephanie, sorry, the way that WebEx shows, I can't see your whole screen, but yes, it is being recorded. Is that correct, Armand? And if I believe it's being recorded, when I logged in, it prompted me that I was being recorded. So we can certainly share and make it available on the Moving a Million website. At a minimum, we can also share this PowerPoint.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Yes, it is. It's being recorded. I can see. I'm able to confirm that. So we can certainly post that on the project website. Okay, so at this point, we've talked about, these three things. There's that full universe of projects. There's how the projects were prioritized, and then the funding capacity within each cycle. So that the Transportation Investment Program, that's that 10-year planning horizon program that I mentioned in one of the earlier slides. This is really what brings all of those pieces together and creates a bridge between planning and delivery. So it is our fiscally constrained programmatic framework that is focused on readiness and sequencing. Projects are organized into the near and medium term and aligned with bonds and grants and other sources of funding. So it's really how the city moves from this universe of needs to projects that can actually be built. In practice, the Transportation Investment Program includes these key components. So we have schematic design. We have an example here, Westport Parkway was one of the PE reports we developed as part of the Transportation Investment Program, where we did 15% design, advance these projects through opinions of probable cost or essentially cost estimates developed by engineers. Utilizing, all of the quantities and bid tabs and all of the specifics that give us a good level of confidence that this is a realistic cost estimate. They go through risk reviews and, consideration of what approval pipelines are required to really get a good understanding of what all is involved in a project. There's also a funding alignment component. So this ties these projects to bond cycles, to grants, and to other sources of funding. It opens up the opportunity to, work with the counties, work with other municipalities to partner on projects. Mr. Casper brought up, 287, coordination with TxDOT is part of this. Getting these projects developed to a point that we can really talk about what is needed and when. And then finally, cash flow and phasing. So this is, recognizing that a good number of the projects that we have ahead of us are large scale, complex projects that are not likely going to be, designed and right-of-way acquired and environmentally cleared and constructed all in one 4-year investment cycle. So part of what we've done with this program is to come up with more realistic phasing and cash flow for those more complex projects that we know are going to take longer than 4 years to get to construction. We can potentially fund design and right-of-way acquisition and environmental clearance for one funding cycle while preparing for construction in the next funding cycle. So just making the most of those bond dollars and other dollars and being really realistic about what can happen in those investment cycle windows. And all that project development paradigm really creates the work plan for the Regional Transportation and Innovation Division of TPW. The dark blue in this diagram represents that work program. So, emphasis on project development, emphasis on programming and schematic design, risk analysis, all of those things that I mentioned previously, but setting this up as the front end work that identifies constraints and refines costs and aligns projects before they move forward into, further design development. Investing in these steps early really sets the city up to reduce risk and prevent delays, further along in the process, and it improves certainty much later in the process. So this is, one of the key recommendations of the plan is to do this early planning and project development work early before projects really advance into 30% design and beyond. Okay, so that's kind of the process. And as I said, this is, 2 years of work summarized in 10 minutes. So there's, for anyone who wants to nerd out more in the process, there's a lot to dig into in the plan document that's on the website. And, as I think Armand shared the email address, we're happy to set up follow-up calls if anyone wants more information in the process, or if you just have any particular questions about it. We're happy to do a deep dive. But the next part is really about the projects. So I'll just pause there before we dig into that and see if there are any questions now. Okay. I'll move on then, and we can reserve questions for when we.
I just want to say we really appreciate. I know everyone asked for this meeting, and not a lot of people are showing up. But I just want to say we appreciate this, and it's really helpful, and appreciate you taking your time to go through this with us.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you being here. So please, and you know, I will say this about Kelly Porter and Armand and TPW. They are not about just checking a box and saying like, okay, we did this meeting. Like they really genuinely want your feedback as the people who are experiencing these issues firsthand. So thank you for coming. And, you know.
No, certainly agreed. Everyone in this neighborhood up in Sendero Ranch is we can't understand why they do what they do, but none of them show up, and I'm glad you showed up, and we all showed up, and it's just glad to hear your voice anyway.
Awesome.
And one thing I'd like to highlight that I think is a lessons learned, something that we've learned through this process, is one of the things that we found that with the 22 bond was that we would find a project, vote on it, and then when the money was allocated for that project, they would be starting from scratch with just like a, hey, you need to build the road. But with this new process, the new transportation investment program, all of the projects in the 26 bond have had some level of vetting to look at things like fatal flaws, and you know, if we need to buy a bunch of right-of-way, things like that, or if there's other considerations we've had to take into account, and we haven't even had the bond election yet. And so what's nice about that is it allows us to be able to be that much more ready to get the projects started when the bond election happens. And if it's approved, right, then it gives our capital delivery engineers a much better head start on this round of bond projects to get it started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Okay. Well, I'll quickly show, I have a couple of slides that are very hard to see what the projects are at this scale, but I will kind of just orient y'all with it. And as I mentioned, you know, you can go to the document and zoom in. And then I also have Michael Schwartz here with AECOM, who's going to pull up the overall Master Roadway Network map, and we can zoom in. But in that 4-year window, we have the 2026 investment cycle project. So this is the list is it's the same set of projects ultimately that, you know, will be voted for in the bond. So it's, you know, there's consistency there. There are some additional projects that we have identified potential partnerships or not potential that we've identified and you know, solidified partnerships to get some additional projects built that don't have any bond need. So you can start to see this framework working already in this first investment cycle. But you know, this list is the bond funded projects are of course consistent with what will be voted for in the bond election. And we'll be updating the list if need be to ensure consistency there. The next investment cycle is the 2030, and you know, this really focuses primarily on construction projects. So many of these projects were initiated in the previous bond cycle, and because of that early work, they will be ready at this point to move into construction during this 2030 cycle. So you're seeing really the next step in the delivery pipeline. a lot of projects in North Fort Worth, of course, because there's a lot of design work for the 2026 cycle. So 2030 will really be a year of a lot of shovels in the ground on some of the major projects that impact your commutes. 2034 is our next investment cycle in that 10-year window. And this, continues working down that prioritized list of projects that I talked about earlier. Projects are essentially selected, starting from the top of the ranked list and moving downward based on what fits within that projected funding capacity that I mentioned. You'll see that cash flow phasing approach that we discussed earlier here. So some projects are relatively straightforward, and they're planned for both design and construction within this cycle. Others are larger, more complex, and focus on advancing them through design or environmental clearance, so that they can be ready for the next cycle to be constructed. Okay, and then so that's that 10-year transportation investment program. Kind of bucket of projects. The next is that 25-year prioritized program that we talked about earlier. These are our long-term projects beyond the 10-year window. They include those gap analysis projects that I mentioned earlier through our technical analysis, but also bond candidates that didn't rank high enough for any of the previous cycles. We do have cost estimates for all of these projects. This really becomes the baseline for future bond and investment cycles so that the city is not, starting from scratch each time. So these, projects are mapped and ranked and ready to advance as funding becomes available. Should also mention that, this is the prioritization and the order of the projects is not carved in stone. It's set up to be an evolving or sort of living prioritization process so that if new sources of funding, for example, become available, that a project can move up if it's particularly well suited for that source of funding. Or if conditions change, if development patterns change, it's set up to be flexible and to adapt to changing environments. Okay, and then next is the active transportation and micromobility projects. So with this, we have a 2019 active transportation plan that was developed. A really robust network came out of that process. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we wanted to just take a look at how we could prioritize these projects and come up with more of a priority network. So they were, and also all of those projects and the data that supported them was, pre-pandemic. So we wanted to also update the data, run the analysis again. The major focus for us was on that network continuity or contiguousness of the active transportation network. So closing short but critical gaps, that keep the system from functioning as a more connected network. So similar to our roadway strategy of, what are the, shorter segments that close critical gaps and kind of unlock a more contiguous corridor. So that was the focus of the prioritization of those active transportation projects. We separated them by mode and came up with a top 20 for each mode. We have bikeway projects as shown here, trails projects as shown here, and then sidewalk and crossing projects. Crossing projects meaning crosswalks or any type of improvement to get across a roadway. Does someone have a question? I thought I heard. Okay. Okay, and then so that's the long range, that 25-year. The next and final bucket of projects is our ultimate build out. So this is our master roadway network. This is, as I mentioned in that first slide with that kind of overlapping Venn diagram, you know, this is the result of our travel demand modeling and essentially what the ultimate build out needs are for the system. So this is the required capacity at full entitlement build out. And this is really focused more on right-of-way preservation, so that, you know, as developments are planned and move through the city's development review process, we can ensure that adequate right-of-way is preserved to meet the ultimate system needs. The master roadway network replaces the master thoroughfare plan. So all of those links are carried forward into the master roadway network, and we have reclassified them. So we applied a new functional classification system, you know, that is more consistent with a federal functional classification system. So we have the standard categories of principal arterials, major arterials, minor arterials, and then a new addition is major collectors. So we have mapped all of those major collectors, which were not part of the master thoroughfare plan previously. And this is just a little bit of methodology for how we determined essentially the ultimate lane needs for each roadway. And that's all based on the capacity needs for 2050 based on the travel demand model that we worked with COG to develop. And then, you know, lastly, we wanted to make sure, even though we've gone to this more simplified functional classification system, we wanted to make sure that we were accounting for the different context that these roadways traverse. So rather than, you know, classifying them based on their land uses, we opted to apply these overlays to the master roadway network that recognize the different land use and, you know, recommend or requires a different cross-section treatment or a different spacing, access management requirement, et cetera, you know, based on the specific context that the roadway is within. So on the screen, we have our transportation technology areas. You know, these are areas where the city is wanting to, you know, make space for technology, whether that is through some sort of transit signal priority to you know, give priority to transit vehicles for, you know, ITS or other types of emerging technologies. We have these hot corridors that Armand and his team have identified through related studies. You know, essentially these hub of transportation technology corridors. A lot of different, we have, you know, Alliance and the Alliance Logistics District, some of the autonomous vehicles that are happening there, and managed lanes. So, you know, making sure that these things are memorialized in the plan and that anytime a project goes through the development review process, it's understood that, you know, we need to consider these needs as those roadways are developed. And then we have also our transit priority areas. So these are our transit priority corridors. Some of those are technology allowances. Some of those are, you know, could potentially include dedicated lanes or other types of transit priority area measures. And then we also have our design districts and the core area and urban villages, those districts that really represent a more compact development style. And therefore, you know, if an arterial is going through one of these more compact walkable districts, then we want to look at separating bicycles and pedestrians, for example. Or, you know, we want to apply different access management strategies. And similar for our freight priority areas. So whenever a roadway is in one of our freight priority areas or in one of our industrial growth centers, we want to make sure that pedestrians and bicycles are fully separated from the roadway, so they'll have a different cross section. You know, we want to make sure that access management is tighter. So all of the different ways that we can configure cross sections and access and movements to better accommodate the land use that the roadway, traverses. So that is our last slide there. As I mentioned, that is the sort of executive summary level overview of the plan document itself. I do want to make sure we have time to pull up the roadway network and at the very least show y'all how to navigate and provide comments on the roadway network. But are there any questions on the presentation before we do that? Okay. If questions arise as y'all dig in, again, we've got several different ways to contact us here. So please do reach out. Armand dropped the email address in the chat, which I'm noticing is absent from the slide. My apologies, not sure how that happened. But please, there are lots of ways to contact us. We're happy to answer any questions that could arise. Okay, Michael, I'll stop sharing.
All right. Let me know when you can see my screen here.
Yes.
Is that showing up? Awesome. Great. So my name is Michael Schwartz. I'm with AECOM. Been working with Kelly, Armand, and Kelly Porter there at Fort Worth for over the project's extent here, and sharing with you now a common application showing that master roadway network that Kelly just reviewed, and some of the key factors I was going to go over she covered there in the presentation. So I'll just share at a high level that this is an aggregate, an amalgamation of the previous MTP, those bond projects, those prioritized projects that Kelly went over, and then the TxDOT on system roadways. And they've all been consolidated into a plan here for Fort Worth, where we're on that synchronous functional class system with what TxDOT and the federal government use to classify roadways. And that way we're going to be consistent with not only them, but also the neighboring jurisdictions, different counties, and cities that are adjacent to Fort Worth. So it's really great for the alignment with those different systems, and making sure that there's cohesion there between all the neighbors and how we feed into their system and how they feed into ours. So that's been a big part of this. And yeah, really one of the key points I wanted to share before we get into the application is that the hierarchy in the development of this is really, the first priority was for connectivity. There are many new alignments based on the long-term projects or the prioritized projects, and stakeholders input. But the first and foremost is the connectivity that we're showing, and then the alignments come into play. So happy to take your comments either verbally here or as I kind of go through the application, and we can drop the link in the chat for you all to be able to experiment with either during the call or on your own. So this is the application. Want to know about your experience along various corridors. What you do is zoom into an area of your interest. You will come up here to 287 as it was previously discussed. And you'll click the comment button. So that's this icon down here in this box. Click or tap on the map where you'd like to indicate your idea, concern, or suggestion. And then after placing the comment on the map, there's a required field for you to type your comment. And then there's two optional fields, being your name and contact information. You could put your email or phone number if your desires for us to reach back out to you with our receipt of your comment. And then, like Kelly noted at the beginning of the call with one of Joe's questions, that we'll be cataloging and documenting all this in terms of how we're addressing comments and how they've been either incorporated or justification as to maybe why they aren't fully integrated into some of the remediation that we do based on these comments. So this is where you'd put your comment. I'll put test here just as an example. Name's Michael, and I would hit save. And now you can see that comment's there. So there's any functionality questions, we do have the master roadway network here, and it's symbolized by those functional classifications. So it could be good to pull that up here for you. We have this legend icon. It's either located down here or up at the top, where we have the master roadway network in the different colors as they're represented in their hierarchy. So that hierarchy, similar to what Kelly showed in that table, is the intensity of the use of the roadway, whether it's the right-of-way required, the number of lanes, and that's largely derived from the travel demand model from NCT COG. Yeah, so we have that functional classification, we have the comments and the intersection, and then there are other layers available if you so choose from the presentation that Kelly shared, where you could turn on different layers to see the interaction with the application or with the master roadway network. And then one final thing I'll show is these 4 boxes down here is an option to change it to a different base map. So you could turn on something like the imagery hybrid and be able to see an aerial view, find your home, find the roads that you're interested, or the commute corridor that you're interested in based on some landmarks and things. So I'll leave it there. If there's any specific areas you'd like to zoom in, and we can leave comments on the call or discuss any ideas that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
We'll go ahead and drop a link in the chat to the application. And then also, as I mentioned, movingamillion.org. Right there, when you land, you can explore both the draft plan and this application that Michael has up. A couple different ways for you to explore the network. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, of course.
It may also be worth noting, this is the roadway network. So this is that ultimate horizon that I mentioned, kind of the system's ultimate needs at full build out. So there's not necessarily a planning year associated with this, but all of the projects that are within that, 4-year, 10-year, 25-year window will be within this network. So it really does represent all the different scales and all of the different horizons from a roadway perspective, that are recommended with the plan.
Hey, Michael, can you zoom into the Sendero Ranch area? Since we have some residents of the Sendero Ranch, I thought it might be nice for them to see it. So just a little bit
north. Is it up north here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah. And so I just wanted you to be able to see that. We've been doing a lot of coordination and a lot of research about and a lot of modeling in terms of what the system needed. We spent, what do you think, about 6 months, Kelly, on the Transportation Supportive Index, where we tried to figure out, based upon the projected growth over the next 25 years, what type of transportation system would be required to be able to support that type of growth. And and based upon that, that's where we got a lot of those projected traffic volumes that you'll see that turned into the type of road that these needed to be. So like you'll see a lot of minor arterials and major collectors here, and that is based upon the anticipated traffic volume based upon the amount of growth that we're having. I know this area is a very high growth area, and there's going to be a lot of new households in the coming years. And so part of our research was in trying to figure out, okay, we know there's going to be a lot of households. How many trips can we anticipate that's going to be? and how many roadways then do we need to put in the plan and how big do those roadways need to be for us to be able to support that level of growth? And what's nice about this is if you'll see one of the main outputs that you'll see here is more than one way to get out of the neighborhood. I know that for many in Sendero Ranch, only Sendero Ranch was the only way to get out. And now we have an eastern route. But in our plan, we show 4 different ways to get out. And eventually a 5th one when John Day Road gets extended. Part of that's in the Hazlet ETJ, so it's gonna require increased coordination with the city of Hazlet. But our goal is to be able to hear what you have shared as a concern, which is, what is your plan to support all of the growth in this area? What is your plan to have a roadway network that can handle all of the growth in this in this part of town? And so did any of you have any questions even about this area? About what the plan is?
Maybe they need to dig in. I know it's a lot of kind of information to dump. I know that from Stephanie, and Joe, y'all mentioned several people were interested in this information. So, we appreciate you sharing the website with them and sharing the contact info. We'll be sure to post this recording and make it available. And perhaps questions will arise from sharing the information with others who we know have interest. And I just wanted to make sure that we did, Mr. Casper, you mentioned that you added a comment. Was that on this map here, or was that on our master transportation plan PDF document? I want to make sure that we captured it. Perhaps he had to step away. It is dinner time. We'll take a look, Michael, and make sure we have that comment. And we can reach out to Mr. Casper if we don't have it.
We're all good. All of y'all
Okay.
did so well listening to all of us. So I appreciate everything you did, and take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And so, if you do have questions or comments, obviously you know how to reach us. But if there are no further questions, then we'll give you back your 30 minutes.
Okay. thank y'all very much. We really appreciate your time on this Wednesday evening. And we look forward to receiving any feedback that you do have and working with y'all to improve the plan.
All right. Have a
All
good day.
right.
Great.
y'all.
Thank you, everyone.